Okay, so today I want to talk about Apple and social media and Twitter, and I suppose a recent spat between Apple and Elon Musk over at Twitter, and the way in which I think I'm going to propose that the way in which corporations like Apple respond to and interact with social media, and also actually to the same degree the way in which mainstream media reports on and responds to social media impacts social media and has actually made it, in my view, the sort of horrible, nasty place that it is, that maybe sometimes in a bid to try and make social media a nicer place, it's actually had quite the opposite effect. So look, there's a lot to talk about with regard to Twitter, of course, and Elon Musk at the moment. I'm not going to make this video the place for that. I maybe ought to do another video on that, I think, because just to sort of get that off my chest as well. That's what all this is about now, really getting some of these things off my chest, at least for the next few videos probably. But this was a tweet that came up the other day. So what had happened was, I'm looking on Twitter and of course, there's so much about Elon Musk and what he's doing with Twitter. And he tweeted that Apple had stopped advertising, but also that Apple was threatening him. I'm not that bothered about the advertising part of it, by the way, right now, although we will talk about advertising in a minute. It will sort of roll back to that, hopefully, if I get my ducks in order here. But it's the other part of it that was interesting, which was that he was talking about effectively saying that Apple has threatened him, that if you let certain people back, if you don't really make Twitter the space that we want it to be, then we might remove your app off our app store, which is obviously a big thing. What is Twitter if it's not an app on Android and Apple devices, right? You strip either of those two parts away. Okay, you can view it on your PC or Mac, but really that's it, isn't it? It's an app on a phone for most people. So you take that away, they hold a lot of power over a business that he's just paid $40 billion for. And it was a response that somebody had made to that. I have the response here on my phone. I will put this response up on the screen. It's this LBRY. I looked up LBRY to see who they are. They are a company that utilizes blockchain technology to try and make a sort of decentralized repository of sort of videos and stuff like that. I think a sort of library of information sources that you can put on there, and then the app is effectively an interface where you can search for the things that you want to see. So effectively they're billing themselves as a sort of repository of these things that isn't governed by the whims of YouTube or the whims of Vimeo or whoever, right? It's not just up to one organization to decide, well, yes, we're happy with you saying that on that video, but we're going to pretend that video will be sort of shadow banned. It exists, but only if you put the exact term in, and we probably won't even let you know that we're doing it, and this video we're outright banning. They were sort of getting away from that, I think. And this is what they said in response to Musk. Apple disallowed almost anything related to COVID, especially vaccines or human origins of the virus. We had to build a list of over 20 terms to not show results for, only on Apple devices. Apple also later rejected us because users included Pepe images in videos. And then there was one of the images they had, I've got it on here. This was the actual, just to show I think this was genuine, app review. Hello Tom, thank you for providing this information. Regarding 1.1, we continue to find that your app or metadata includes content that some users may find upsetting, offensive or otherwise objectionable, specifically Pepe the Frog. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, really. And this idea first that Apple would try. You've got a phone, right? It's your device. You've plumped for Apple. I haven't, but the same would hold true with Samsung and Google Android on the device that I have. You've plumped for that device, and then they are effectively limiting your device. There are certain search terms that are just mysteriously not going to bring up any results. And this is what set me thinking about what that's all about, right? Because it's a strange set of circumstances. And I think that this is something that, are they giving us what we want here? And I think that in a strange way, they are. And in a more direct way, they aren't. So let me sort of explain what I mean by that. When I say they aren't, I don't think anybody wants their own device limited so that they can't search for certain things. That's not something that anybody's crying out for. Please, Apple, can you give me apps that don't allow me to search for some things? Because when you think about it, you choose what you search for. If you don't want to search for something, you just don't search for it, right? You don't rely on Apple stopping you searching for it. And if you want to search for it, then you want to search for it. So you still don't want Apple to stop you searching for it. So you don't really want Apple, it's not achieving anything for them to stop you searching for something that you don't want to search for because you weren't going to search for it anyway. And you really don't want them to stop you searching for the things that you do want to search for. So I don't think anybody wants that for their own device. Nobody wants these corporations to unilaterally and smugly start determining on our account, on our behalf, what we can use our phones for in this way, what information we are allowed access to, and what information they deem we are not allowed access to. So people don't want this. But in a strange way, and in quite a corrosive way, I think people do want this. Because it's not about them, is it? It's not about you not being able to access the searches that you want to make. It's about the people you don't like, the people who have views you oppose, not being able to make the searches that they want to make. It's a little bit sinister, really. And it sets up, the problem is, it sets up a bit of a game. And it's a game where offence, in this case, is everything. You can see what they said about that Pepe the Frog. You can't have a Pepe the Frog image because some people are offended. But when you think about that, that's a little bit odd, isn't it? Because when you think about the images that cause offence, I am sure there are some people who are offended by that. I struggle to really see how anybody could motivate any significant level of offence. I mean, but that's not the way it works. And I'll explain that. But in terms of offence, think of all the other images that cause offence, right? You've got a Christian cross or an Islamic crescent or the American flag, the stars and stripes. There must be, in the Western world, that doesn't cause any offence. But there are some people in some parts of the world that burn that flag, that find it tremendously. Everything it represents is anathema to them. It's abhorrent to them. Very offensive, some of these images. The rainbow flag, loved by some people, deeply offensive. The changes to the rainbow flag with the extra bits added deeply offend some people. The bits that are added or the bits that should have been added but haven't been added. Where does it end? It's all offensive, really offensive to some people, it would seem, or at least that is how they portray it. And yet that's what they pick on, and I'm sure they haven't picked on all these other things. Which means one of two things. And I don't think either of them are things that we really want. Either we're just at the whim of Apple, and really it's nothing to do with whether something's offensive. It's really to do with Apple or a few people at Apple, and we all just got to go along with what they are happy for us to see and what they're not happy for us to see. And I don't think anybody wants that. When you've got your device, right? I don't really want a device that's limited just by the whims of a few people that work at some nasty corporation. That's not what I want. I want a little bit more freedom to my device, quite honestly, than that. Or the other alternative is that it's not based on real offence or any kind of sensible set of rules that is applied in a consistent manner. Of course it isn't. As I say, some of those other things I mentioned, they would have to be, if it's based on those things of offence, then they would have to be, you can't have a video with an American flag in it either. It's based on who shouts the loudest, how offended you can appear to be. And this is where I talk about it being a game. And the problem when you have a game like this is people start playing to the rules of the game. I said this before a few years back with regards to football, association football, soccer. There's always a thing, it's the World Cup now, and of course, if you watch those games, you will see the histrionic rolling around of some of the players, right? At the slightest touch. Sometimes they haven't even been touched, They get a hand in the chest and they go down clutching their faces, and you think, if you were an alien, you came down from another planet, you'd think they're maybe going to die here. They're never going to, walk again, or their nose must be broken or something, and then 30 seconds later, after they've been awarded the penalty, they're all up and smiling and everything's fine again. And people blame the player. Don't blame the player, right? When one person does it, you can blame the player. When everybody's doing it, then you blame the rules. And these footballers, they're not flaky, pathetic individuals. They're cynical, very, very well played professionals that are maximising their output in terms of results based upon the rules. And it's the rules, it's the way that football is structured. There's not enough penalty for doing these things when you're caught. And there's too much to be gained. The card system, all of it is, if there was a sin bin, if you altered the rules slightly, you could maybe alter the rules and then gradually you'd see these behaviours go. But the way it is, the rules encourage those behaviours. And I think it's the same thing here. If you just saw one or two people overreacting on social media, you could blame the individual. But it's not. It's the game. It's the rules. It's encouraging this kind of thing. And I think this kind of behaviour from Apple, unfortunately, maybe they feel these kind of restrictions are done for the right reason. But what they do is they encourage us to take offence and to manifest that offence in the most over-the-top, hyperbolic manner that we can, because that's the thing that will gain. That's the thing that will give us the win condition, which is affecting the other person, right? We want their material to be blocked. We want their opinions to be suppressed. And so we need to be as over-the-top as we possibly can with our reactions. So it's made, if you think back to these social media spaces 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they weren't as toxic. People were nowhere near as over the top as they are now. The people who were seen as outliers, right? They were seen as, whoa, that's a bit, come on, let's get things in proportion here. And now that's the standard response. And it's not the standard response, I think, because everybody's a flaky snowflake. It's because it works. It's because it's playing to the rules of the game. And this is where, as I said, it does come then back to advertising, because that then becomes another block in cementing these rules, is that there are ways that you can affect people within this. And one of the ways has been mainstream media, and the way that mainstream media reports on these things, and they love as something that's sensationalized. So when you make sensationalized tweets saying, just how terribly offended and how this is the worst thing that's ever happened, that somebody's made this slightly mild statement or made this slightly off-colour joke, that's just meat and gravy to these journalists, because that's the story. That your overreaction is a story, so your overreaction gets represented in the press, and that sets the ball rolling, doesn't it? It sets it rolling all the way back again. And it's the same thing with these advertisers, because it works, doesn't it? You've seen it. You've seen it happen with Twitter now. You've seen it happen with other things before. This didn't used to happen. This used to be the exception, that people would take offence at something and then boycott a company was kind of rare. The company needed to be really centrally involved in it before it happened. And now it can simply be as much as a company, well, we don't like what's happening on Twitter at the moment. If you advertise on Twitter, we're going to boycott your company. And then some other people saying, well, if you stop advertising on Twitter, we're going to boycott your company. And who benefits from that? Ultimately, it's kind of like one of these. The worry is it's like sexual selection, you know, like the peacock's tail, for example, that kind of thing, where it gets out of control and it's hard. Once it starts, it's hard to buck the system. Right. It may well be that if you have a little baby boy peacock with a smaller tail, it'll be a more efficient peacock. But you can't buck the system because all the peahens, they're still picking the boys with the big, long, obstructive, otherwise useless, other than for the sexual selection, tails. So you can't buck the system. And it's the same thing with this advertising. It's hard to buck the system. The only thing that you can do is join in and play the game. The only thing that you can do, if you see someone doing that, is say, well, I'm going to have to retaliate and start adopting the same tactic, and also punish any advertiser that goes along with the other side. It's not clear how you pull out of that. I think what is clear is that there are if we all stand back and take a look at it, I don't think there's any grounds where legitimately we can look at a company like Apple taking a situation where they're going to say, yeah, you can have our app, but you've just got to pretend when people search for certain things that there's just mysteriously no results that turn up, that isn't somehow a little bit sinister. And none of us want that for our device, do we? So we need to decide for ourselves how we're going to function this. Because whatever rules we want to apply to the person we don't like, ultimately they're going to apply to us as well. And that other person, quite legitimately, is going to try and make sure that our choices to view the information that we want to view is going to be as limited as we are making their information. Okay, that's it, I think. I like I say, I probably ought to do a video on Twitter more generally and the Elon Musk thing. I have a real love-hate relationship with Twitter. I'm kind of in two minds as to whether I'd like to see Elon Musk succeed or whether it would be an absolute blessing if he failed, because it would mean the end of Twitter. And there's multiple facets to all of it. So I'll probably make a video on that next. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this one. Interested to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.